My sister got private school, Europe trips at 19. I got $75. At family dinner, she learned I bought a Tribeca penthouse. Dad dropped his fork. She stormed out. Growing up, I learned to minimize my own size. Not physically, but in every other manner that counted. My sister Madeline, Maddie Pierce, had a presence that filled entire rooms, and our parents seemed pleased to let her take up every possible inch of space in our household. I was the oldest daughter by 4 years, but you wouldn't have known it from the way things worked in our family. Madeline attended Westminster Academy, a private institution where tuition exceeded most people's annual salaries. Meanwhile, I walked to the public high school in suburban New Jersey, which was 8 blocks from our house. She spent her spring vacation in the Bahamas and summers in Europe. During those same months, I worked at the local library, stacking books and assisting people in finding what they needed. When she reached 19, our father gave her a beautiful new BMW convertible wrapped in a huge red ribbon. For my 19th birthday, I received a cake and a card with $75. The difference was never explained. Dad worked as a senior partner at a commercial real estate business, and Mom received a large trust from her family. Money wasn't the issue. The issue, as far as I could see, was that Madeline was the golden kid, and I was not. I stopped asking why long ago. When I asked why, I received vague reasons like Madeline requiring certain experiences or having specific qualities that needed to be developed. Mom would stroke my shoulder and remark something about how independent I was and never required much assistance, as if my self-sufficiency was a blessing rather than a requirement they had imposed on me. The pattern established itself early on. When I was 14, Madeline was 10, and I wanted to begin piano lessons. Several of my friends were learning, and I was fascinated to the concept of making music. Mom said we'd see, which I well knew meant no. 3 months later, Madeline said that she'd want to try piano, and the next week, a baby grand appeared in our living room. A private tutor visited the residence 3 times a week. Madeline remained with it for precisely 5 months before calling it uninteresting and switching to horseback riding. The piano then collected dust. I taught myself to play by watching YouTube videos and practiced only when no one else was there since I didn't want to draw notice to my actions. It was embarrassing to want something my parents had bought for Madeline but would not provide for me. So I learnt in secret, my fingers finding the keys in the empty home and producing tunes no one else heard. High school offered more of the same. Madeline went to Westminster Academy, where the girls wore uniforms with the school emblem and carried beautiful leather purses. The campus resembled something from a movie. All of the structures are masonry and the grounds are groomed. Meanwhile, I walked Jefferson. Public highs congested corridors, where lockers were jammed and the cafeteria smelled of industrial cleaner and rotten food. I assured myself everything was good. Jefferson had excellent instructors, and I learned just as much as Madeline did at her rich private school. However, there were times when the discrepancy ached in ways I couldn't ignore. Parent-teacher conferences were the perfect illustration. Mom and Dad would set out entire nights to attend Madeline's conferences at Westminster, frequently taking her out to dinner afterwards. My conferences were scheduled during lunch breaks, and they were brief 15-minute sessions in which my parents asked just the most basic questions before returning to their jobs. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Elaine Whitaker, observed. She was a smart woman in her 50s who appeared to notice more than most people did. During my junior year, she summoned me to her office to discuss college applications. She reviewed my transcript and stated, "You have excellent grades. Top 7% of your class, excellent exam scores, and active extracurriculars. You are going to have alternatives." I informed her that I was mostly looking at state schools. Reuters has a strong reputation, and in-state tuition makes sense. Mrs. Elaine Whitaker observed me throughout her reading lessons. You may aspire higher than that. With your academic background, you may apply to Ivy League colleges. Some of them provide great financial help packages. My parents would not complete out the financial assistance paperwork, I stated plainly. They make too much money for me to qualify for need-based aid, yet they have made it apparent that they will not contribute to my education. Her look changed from interest to anxiety. Did they tell you that directly? Not in that many words. However, my sister attends private school, takes luxurious trips, and my parents openly discuss giving her full tuition at whichever institution she chooses. When I mention college to myself, the discussion shifts. They discuss the importance of public schools and being financially prudent. The message is obvious enough. Mrs. Elaine Whitaker tapped her pen on her desk. How about merit scholarships? That is the strategy, I verified. I am applying to institutions where my scores place me in the top tier of applicants. Hopefully, this converts into scholarship money. She whispered gently. You should not have to do this alone. But I do, I said. So I will. She assisted me in researching scholarship opportunities and developing my application strategy. Thanks to her advice, I applied to 14 colleges with excellent merit assistance programs. When the admission letters arrived in the spring, I had a variety of alternatives. Rutgers provided a full ride, including tuition, housing and board. I agreed immediately. My parents took Madeline and I out to supper to celebrate our college acceptances. Madeline was on her way to Sarah Lawrence, where the annual tuition cost more than $74,000. My full scholarship at Rutgers was mentioned lightly, almost as a footnote. Dad mumbled something about being delighted I had discovered a cheap choice, utterly missing the comedy of the situation. So I learned how to provide for myself. I worked throughout high school, saved what I could, and received a full academic scholarship to Rutgers. Madeline attended Sarah Lawrence College at full pay. Naturally, while she studied poetry and spent semesters abroad, I double majored in business and computer technology, graduating in Los Angeles. I started working for a financial company in Manhattan soon after graduation, living in a small studio apartment in Queens and riding the train to work every day. Madeline returned home after graduation. She discussed becoming a creative director or launching a lifestyle blog. Our parents encouraged her adventures both emotionally and financially. The difference between our post-college lifestyles could not have been more pronounced. While Madeline slept in her childhood bedroom and spent her days capturing Instagram-worthy images, I was catching the metro at 5:45 a.m. to avoid the morning rush. My studio apartment in Queens was about the size of Madeline's walk-in closet at home. The bathroom window viewed a brick wall, and my neighbors fought so loudly that I learned to sleep with earplugs. But I was developing something. Tech Best Solutions, a finance business, was modest yet ambitious. 3 MIT grads founded the company after identifying inefficiencies in major financial institutions' trading platforms. They need someone who knew both the technical aspects and the commercial applications. My double major made me an ideal fit. I started as a junior analyst, but in a startup atmosphere, everyone wears numerous jobs. Within 8 months, I was developing algorithms, attending customer presentations, and collaborating directly with our technical team to improve the program. The hours were harsh, the strain was unrelenting, but I was learning at a rapid speed. My first year at TechVest, I returned home for Christmas. Madeline had recently started seeing someone she met at a gallery opening, a trust fund beneficiary who worked part-time for his father's commercial real estate business. She spent supper recounting their previous vacation to Aspen, including images of herself on the slopes dressed in fancy ski gear. "And how about you?" Mom inquired, looking to me with polite attention. "How is your employment going?" "Really well," I said. "We just signed 2 new clients, and I'm leading the integration process for one of them." "That's nice, dear," Mom said. But her focus had already shifted back to Madeline, who was showing Dad something on her phone. Aunt Vivian Mercer, who had joined us for the holiday, bent down to speak gently. "Tell me more about what you are working on. It sounds complicated." I presented the fundamentals of algorithmic trading and how we were assisting institutions in executing trades more effectively and reducing risk through improved data analysis. Vivian listened closely, asking insightful questions and seemed genuinely interested in my responses. She replied, "You're doing important work," when I concluded. "Don't let anyone convince you differently." Her approval mattered more than she probably imagined. In a home where my successes were continuously overlooked, having someone recognize my efforts seemed like a welcome relief after a lengthy dry spell. The startup culture was tough, yet rewarding. Our CEO, Gavin Harper, was both tough and fair. He pushed all of us to perform at our best, but he also acknowledged talent and celebrated accomplishment. After 20 months, he elevated me to senior analyst and awarded me a modest stock part in the firm. "You're one of the best hires we've made," Gavin said during my evaluation. "You work harder than anybody else here, and your insights have been critical to our development. This equity is only the beginning." I didn't completely comprehend what equity meant at the time. Startup shares appeared to be speculative, with the prospect for a future reward that may never materialize. So I continued to live frugally, saving the majority of my income and investing what I could in index funds. Meanwhile, Madeline's romance with her trust fund lover deteriorated. She tried her hand at working for a fashion PR business but left after 3 months because the hours were excessive. Then she tried to start a lifestyle blog promoting sustainable luxury, which our parents eagerly supported. The blog garnered around 50 followers, the majority of whom were family friends who felt bound to offer their support. After 8 months, she also abandoned the endeavor. Each time I came home, I saw my parents concerned about Madeline's struggle to find direction, never admitting that their ongoing financial support may be contributing to her lack of desire. Why would she push herself when she could be comfortable and secure regardless of her decisions? 4 years into my tenure at TechFest, Gavin convened an all-hands meeting. Several large investment firms had expressed interest in the enterprise. After months of discussions, they decided to go public with the firm. The IPO was set for the following spring. My pulse raced as Gavin described what this meant for employees with equity. Our shares, which were previously theoretical, would become actual, trading assets. The predicted valuation placed my share between $900,000 and $1.35 million, depending on how the market responded. I sat in that conference room, surrounded by coworkers who were already celebrating, and something changed inside of me. It was actual money. Money may change someone's life. The type of money that can purchase independence, security, and options. I still haven't told anyone in my family. The IPO was still months away, and anything might happen. Markets might tumble. Valuations might drop. The whole thing might come apart. But, more importantly, I had learned not to discuss my hopes with those who had never expressed interest in my ambitions. The IPO occurred on a Tuesday in April. I took the day off work and watched the opening bell from my flat, with my laptop resting on my knees. The TechBest stock symbol debuted on the ticker. The price rose steadily throughout the morning, outperforming even Gavin's bullish forecasts. My stock investment was worth somewhat more than $1.25 million at the time of closure. After taxes, I would receive around $780,000. Combined with my savings and investments over the last 4 years, I had over $920,000 in liquid assets. I was 27 years old and, by any fair standard, affluent. The first thing I did was contact my financial advisor, Marianne Keller, whom I had begun dealing with 8 months prior. Marianne was in her 50s, amazing with mathematics, and refreshingly open about money. "Congratulations," she murmured with warmth. "How do you feel?" "Overwhelmed," I acknowledged, unsure of what to do next. Marianne advised me that the first rule of sudden fortune is to do nothing immediately. Let the dust settle. Allow the reality to sink in. Do not make any major decisions for at least 4 months. I took her counsel. I continued to live in my small studio apartment, use the metro, and eat the same foods I had always eaten. Externally, nothing had changed. Internally, everything had changed. I was no longer concerned about unanticipated bills or if I could afford to replace my outdated laptop. The continual low-level concern about money that had persisted in my life for years just vanished. After 4 months, I encountered Marianne again. "I'm ready to start planning," I informed her. We talked about financial methods, tax optimization, and retirement funds. Marianne assisted me in creating a thorough financial strategy that would allow my money to increase while giving stability for the future. She also advised that I consider what I wanted out of life outside financial stability. "You've been in survival mode for years," she said. "You've worked hard, saved carefully, and denied yourself necessities that would have made life easier. You can make various decisions right now." That talk sowed a seed. What did I want? What would make my life more enjoyable, richer, and fulfilling? The solution occurred to me one Saturday afternoon while walking around Tribeca. I had come to Manhattan to see Sophie Bennett for brunch, but I made a detour through an area I had long adored. The streets were tree-lined and picturesque, the buildings stylish and well-kept. The bottom levels were filled by boutiques and cafes, and enormous windows provided glimpses of gorgeous lofts. I passed a real estate business with listings visible in the window. One stood out to me right away. A penthouse with 2 bedrooms, a wraparound terrace, floor-to-ceiling windows, and views of the Hudson River. The price was reported as $1.95 million. 8 months ago, I would have scoffed at the idea of looking at such a listing. But standing there on that lovely afternoon, I knew I could afford it. It's not comfortable. It would require the majority of my liquid assets and a small mortgage, but it was within reach. I pushed open the door to the real estate office before I could reason myself out of it. The closing procedure took many months, including house inspections, financial verifications, and haggling over minor fixes. The seller was an investment banker heading to London, and he was quite particular about every aspect. I engaged a real estate lawyer, took out a modest mortgage to cover the amount I couldn't pay with cash assets, and negotiated the complicated world of New York City real estate transactions. Throughout it all, I remained silent with my family. Madeline had lately revealed that she was considering pursuing a master's degree in arts administration, which would cost $65,000 and provide unclear professional rewards. My parents were debating whether to totally fund it or have her take out some loans. The discussion dominated numerous family dinners I attended. Nobody inquired what was going on in my life. Nobody questioned why I appeared distracted, or why I was making numerous phone calls to my attorney. I'd become so used to being disregarded that their lack of inquiry no longer astonished me. The shutdown occurred on a Friday in September. I sat in a conference room with my attorney, the seller's attorney, and a title company representative, signing more paperwork than I was aware existed. After the final signing was completed, the seller's attorney handed me a set of keys. "Congratulations," she responded, smiling. "You're now the owner of a beautiful piece of New York City real estate." I felt the keys in my palm. They symbolized far more than just access to an apartment. They represented years of hard work, numerous sacrifices, and a commitment to live my life on my own terms, despite the fact that I had no support from those who should have helped me the most. The purchase needed meticulous financial preparation. I used a large portion of my cash assets to make a down payment and took out a small mortgage to cover the rest. Marianne Keller assisted me in structuring it in a way that made sense, leaving adequate financial reserves for furnishings and emergencies, while yet reaching my aim of purchasing the penthouse. Moving day was crazy. I had hired movers to carry my belongings from the Queen's flat. Although I didn't own anything worth moving, the most of my furniture was inexpensive and old. I decided to start again, purchasing new things that truly matched the room and showed my style rather than my financial constraints. Sophie came over the day after I moved in, bringing champagne and takeout from an upscale Japanese restaurant. We sat on the patio as the sun fell and watched the light shift over the river. "This is incredible," she said, nodding toward the view. "You accomplished this all on your own. That is wonderful." "It feels surreal," I said. "Like I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It's not a fantasy," Sophie informed me. "It's what happens when ability meets chance, and you're clever enough to take advantage of it. You earned this." We drank to fresh beginnings, and I felt a feeling of calm I hadn't had in years. This spot was mine. Nobody had handed it to me. Nobody could take it away. Nobody's perspective on it mattered but myself. The weeks after moving in were hectic. I gradually equipped the flat, selecting each piece carefully. I wanted the room to be smart, yet comfortable, reflecting who I had become rather than where I had come from. A gray sectional couch for the living room, a dining table that could seat 8, artwork from local galleries that appealed to me, and plants that added vitality to the sun-drenched spaces. Work continued to go smoothly. TechBest had swiftly expanded following its initial public offering, and I had been elevated to Director of Client Solutions. The position came with more responsibilities and a significant pay bump. I was traveling more, interacting with executives from large financial institutions, and establishing a reputation as someone capable of solving complicated challenges. My personal life stayed quiet. I dated sometimes, but nothing significant ever happened. Most guys were either scared by my professional achievement or resented my financial independence. I decided I'd rather be alone than compromise who I'd become to make others happy. Aunt Vivian Mercer was the only family member I had close touch with. We would meet for lunch every couple weeks, generally at a place near her midtown office. She worked as a literary agent and had a successful career representing authors. During one of our meals, she inquired if I had informed my parents about the new apartment yet. "No," I answered simply. "Why not?" Vivian inquired, but her tone indicated that she already knew the answer. "Because they never ask," I explained. "They periodically call to inform me about Madeline's latest plans or to discuss a family event, but they never ask me about my life in any meaningful way. Why should I volunteer information that they plainly do not care about?" Vivian sighed. "You know they care about you. They're just terrible at displaying it." "Caring about someone means demonstrating interest in their life," I told them. "It entails asking questions and listening to responses. It entails acknowledging accomplishments and providing support during difficult times. My parents have not done any of these things for me. They established a relationship in which Madeline is the star and I am the supporting player, expecting to be grateful for the odd shred of attention." "You're not wrong," Vivian acknowledged. "I've watched it happen for years, and I've called them out on it more than once. but they don't seem to understand what they're doing. Then maybe it's time they found out, I said. That chat took place 1 month before Grandma Eleanor Caldwell's birthday dinner. Grandma Eleanor turned 87 in October, a little more than 14 months after I moved into the penthouse. Mom planned a meal at her favorite restaurant, an upmarket Italian establishment in Montclair where the waitstaff knew her by name. The entire family was anticipated to attend. I traveled in from the city on Saturday afternoon, dressed in a modest black dress, and arrived right on time. Madeline was already at the table, dressed in a designer clothing I recognized from a recent fashion magazine. She was discussing her recent vacation to Napa Valley, describing wine tastings at Michelin-starred restaurants with the zest of someone who has never had to check a price tag. Mom and Dad listened intently to everything she said. Grandma Eleanor smiled indulgently as she sat at the head of the table. I sat in the empty chair across from my Aunt Vivian, Mom's younger sister. Aunt Vivian Mercer had always been different from the rest of the family, more perceptive and less impressed by superficial things. She gave me a real grin and inquired how I was doing. I said that I was busy with work. But it's good, truly. Still working for that IT company? She asked. The same one. It has been an excellent experience. Madeline looked over, suddenly realizing my presence. Working such long hours must be quite stressful. Aren't you tired of the grind? I smiled blandly. I enjoy what I do. That's good, Mom said. We are concerned that you will burn out due to your excessive workload. I take care of myself, I told her. Dad signaled the waiter to bring wine. The discourse shifted to other issues. Grandma Eleanor Caldwell's garden, a cousin's impending wedding, and some drama at the country club. I contributed when asked, but largely watched, as I usually did. Dinner has come. We ate pasta and shared dishes like chicken piccata and veal marsala. Grandma Eleanor told stories about her childhood in Brooklyn, and everyone laughed at the right times. It was a pleasant family gathering, the kind I'd attended dozens of times before. Then, as dessert was served, Aunt Vivian looked at me with curiosity. I ran into Lydia Prescott last week, she explained. She mentioned seeing you leave that beautiful building in Tribeca with the doorman and the glass facade. I didn't realize you had moved to that neighborhood. The table became silent. Every head turned to face me. Oh, I replied casually, setting down my fork. Yes, I moved around 14 months ago. Have you moved? Mom's eyebrows rose. You didn't tell us you were relocating. It didn't seem like a big deal, I said. I just wanted a change of scenery. Madeline leaned forward, her expression sharp with interest. Try Tessa. That area is extremely expensive. What kind of accommodation did you get? I took a sip of water and considered how much to share. A penthouse with 2 bedrooms and nice views. The silence that ensued was profound. Dad's fork clattered on his plate. Mom's mouth opened slightly before closing again. Madeline stared at me as if I had suddenly begun speaking a foreign language. A penthouse? Madeline's voice went up an octave. In Tribeca? Do you have any idea how much they cost? I am aware of the price, I said mildly. That's why I looked for months before making an offer. How? Mom appeared to be struggling with basic speech. How did you afford something like that? I mentioned that I've been working for nearly 9 years and that my company went public a while ago. My stock options did extremely well. Dad discovered his voice. Stock options. How well are we communicating? I said I had enough money to make a substantial down payment. I have a mortgage, but it's easily manageable given my current income. Madeline's face had turned red. This is ridiculous. You bought a penthouse without informing anyone? Without even mentioning that you had that much money? You never asked, I replied simply. We are your family. Madeline stood abruptly, her voice becoming so loud that other diners looked over. Her chair scraped against the floor. You don't simply hide something like this. I wasn't hiding anything, I clarified. I simply did not announce it. There is a distinction. Madeline grabbed her purse from the back of her chair, her hands trembling. Tears had begun to form in her eyes, but I couldn't tell whether they were from anger or hurt. This is unbelievable, she exclaimed, her voice breaking slightly. Simply unbelievable. She turned and walked quickly toward the restaurant's entrance, unconcerned about the restroom or maintaining her composure. Within moments, she had vanished through the front door. Mom rose halfway from her seat, clearly torn between following Madeline and remaining at the table. Grandma Eleanor watched the exchange with interest, a slight smile on her lips. Aunt Vivian appeared ecstatic, though she tried to hide it behind her wine glass. Mom reached across the table to me. "Sweetheart, we only wish you had told us. We could have helped you and given you advice." I had advisors, so I interrupted gently. Financial planners, real estate attorneys, and the entire team. I was cautious about my decision. "But we are your parents," Dad continued, and he sounded pained. "We should have taken part in this." I stared at him immediately. "When have you ever been involved in my financial decisions? You did not assist me pay for college. You did not contribute to my living expenditures when I relocated to the city. You never inquired what I needed or how I was doing. I learned how to manage money on my own, because I had to." The truth hung in the air, unmistakable and unsettling. Mom sat back down slowly, visibly shaken. "I suppose we did let you work things out on your own," she confessed gently. Aunt Vivian selected that time to speak, and her voice slashed through the tension like a scalpel through butter. "Do you know what interests me?" She spoke while staring at the vacant chair where Madeline had been sitting. "Your sister purchased a condominium in one of Manhattan's most expensive areas entirely on her own merit, and instead of being pleased or glad for her, the initial reaction was anger and inquiry. Why is that?" The question remained in the air. Mom and Dad exchanged eyes without saying anything. Vivian continued, her gaze traveling across Mom and Dad. "For years, I've observed this family devote resources to one daughter while the other fends for herself. I've seen you highlight Madeline's substandard successes while ignoring your other daughter's true achievements. And now that she has exceeded all realistic expectations, you are all behaving as if she did something wrong by failing to keep you informed." Mom looked distraught. "Vivian, that is not fair." "Is not it?" Vivian challenged. "When was the last time somebody inquired about her work? Her life? When was the last time you provided assistance or support without being asked? This youngster paid her own way through college, established a profession, and purchased real estate in Manhattan. That should be praised, not investigated." The hush that ensued was deafening. Other diners had clearly seen the hubbub, but I found myself unconcerned. Something inside of me felt lighter than it had in years. Grandmother Eleanor cleared her throat. Everyone turned to gaze at her, the family matriarch, awaiting her decision on the problem. She said, "I'm proud of you," gazing directly at me. "I'm proud of you for learning to stand on your own. I'm proud of you for not waiting for handouts or playing the victim. You spotted what you wanted and worked hard to get it. That requires character." She turned to see the vacant chair where Madeline had been seated, and her countenance tightened slightly. "Your other daughter has received everything and appreciated nothing. Your sister's achievement does not constitute an assault on her. It merely shows that hard work pays off." She returned my gaze with kind eyes. "I've always knew you were exceptional. I'm simply thrilled everyone else is seeing it too." Dad looked between me and Grandma Eleanor, obviously wondering how to proceed. "I don't believe we intended for things to be that uneven," he replied eventually. "We just believed Madeline needed additional help." "You felt she needed more help," I remarked gently. "So you showed her extra support. That was your decision. But you don't have to be astonished that I learned to sustain myself, nor do you have to be offended that I didn't involve you in the prosperity that emerged from that self-sufficiency." He nodded slowly, appearing older somehow. "You're correct. We made errors. You did, and I agreed. But I'm no longer furious. I stopped getting furious when I realized your favoritism harmed you more than it did me. You allowed Madeline to grow reliant and entitled. You taught her that everything would be provided to her. But you taught me resilience, even if it wasn't your purpose." Mom looked to the restaurant entrance where Madeline had vanished, and then back at me. She departed. She contacted the car service and returned home. Mom mentioned something unnecessary. "She's very upset." Aunt Vivian Mercer explained that she is unhappy because her worldview has been questioned. She thought she was unique, favored, and destined for tremendous success. Finding out that her sister has quietly overtaken her has pushed her to face reality. That seemed cruel, Mom objected weakly. Vivian said that reality is frequently the case. But it is necessary. The dinner ended uncomfortably. We ate birthday cake and sung to Grandma Eleanor Caldwell, but the enthusiasm was faded. When it was time to depart, Mom held me passionately and murmured, "We are so proud of you." "I'm sorry we didn't say it enough." I embraced her back, feeling torn. "Thank you. Dad shook my hand formally and strangely. I'd want to see the new place sometime if you're prepared to show us around. Maybe, I said noncommittally. Aunt Vivian led me to the car. That was quite the evening, she remarked with a smile. I didn't mean to make a scene, I told her. Oh, please, she said, laughing. That scenario was 32 years in the making. You merely happened to light the match. Furthermore, some families require a good explosion to cleanse the air. I drove back to Manhattan as the sun fell over the skyline, coloring the towers orange and pink. My phone vibrated with messages. Mom asked if we could chat. Dad is sending an article regarding real estate investing. Grandma Eleanor texted simply, "Come visit soon. I want to know everything about your life." Madeline has not contacted me. I did not expect her to. The subsequent weeks were weird. Mom phoned regularly, asking questions about my employment that she had never bothered with before. Dad wanted to talk about financial techniques and portfolio management. They were attempting, in their own awkward way, to close the distance that had always been between us. Madeline kept her radio muted. Mom said she had moved back in with them temporarily and was sorting things out. I felt a pang of something. Not exactly compassion, but certainly not satisfaction. I never intended to hurt my sister. I simply wanted to live my own life without being made to feel inferior. Madeline followed up 4 months after the dinner. She texted me asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, interested about what she had to say. We met in a cafe in Midtown, which was familiar ground for both of us. She appeared weary and less polished than usual. We got drinks and sat near the window, watching the folks hurry by on the pavement outside. Madeline eventually said, "I've been thinking a lot about my life and how I've been living." I waited and said nothing. "I was really angry after dinner," she said. "But when I thought about it, I knew Vivian was correct. I've been coasting. I've been waiting for things to happen to me rather than causing them." "Okay," I said gently. She said, "I'm not going to pretend we're suddenly going to be best friends. I know we've never been close, but I wanted to tell you that I understand now. I understand why you kept your accomplishment hidden, and I apologize for causing a scene." It wasn't the ideal apology, but it was real. I could see it in her eyes. "Thank you," I replied. "I appreciate it." "I'm thinking about returning to school," she informed me. "Consider getting a graduate degree in a practical field, such as marketing or business administration. Instead than just talking about it, start working on your career." "That seems like an excellent idea," I said, and I meant it. We spoke for another hour, and the discussion was easier than I had anticipated. We were never going to be the sisters who shared everything and spent every weekend together. There was too much history between us for that. But perhaps we can find a way to be cordial, even nice, in tiny doses. When we left Ways on the street corner, Madeline shocked me by grabbing me for a short embrace. For what it's worth, she stated, "The penthouse is quite spectacular. You should be proud." "I am," I stated simply. She went away toward the train, and I returned to my office building. My life hadn't changed significantly since the meal at Grandma Eleanor's birthday. I still worked hard hours, meticulously handled my finances, and lived in my lovely apartment with sweeping city views. But something had changed inwardly. I had finally put down some of the weight I had been carrying for years. My family recognized who I was now. They were aware of what I had done, not via luck or handouts, but through hard work and sound judgment. They couldn't undo anything, couldn't put me back in the box labeled the other daughter or the self-sufficient one who doesn't require anything. Yes, I had proven something to them, but more significantly, to myself. I had broken away from the position they had assigned me and built a life wholly on my own terms. And that life was rather wonderful. The next month I hosted Thanksgiving at my place. It was the first time my entire family had been inside my home, and watching their expressions as they took in the surroundings gave me a calm contentment. Mom kept stroking the marble surfaces in the kitchen. Dad stood on the patio for 20 minutes, simply marveling at the scenery. Even Madeline appeared to be really astonished, moving from room to room with awe on her face. Grandma Eleanor reclined into the most comfy chair in the living room and proclaimed that she would never leave. Aunt Vivian helped me cook, and we joked in the kitchen as the bird roasted. It wasn't flawless. Family is never perfect, but it was authentic in a way that our previous meetings had never been. Everyone knew where they stood. The illusions had been peeled away, and what left was more genuine, if occasionally painful. As we sat around the table I had picked for myself, in the house I had earned myself, eating food I had cooked myself, I glanced at my family's faces and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not quite forgiveness. That would require more time. I do not feel like I belong. I'd learned to put myself first, but I was close to finding serenity. Madeline caught my glance across the table and smiled briefly. I grinned back. We were never going to be the sister any of us had hoped for, but maybe, just maybe, we could be honest with each other. And it was enough.